Uh-oh.
It's time for the Early Bird Special. Bringing you the best stories from the world of sports and sports entertainment. Now, here are your hosts, Sparky and Burdick.
Well, good Friday morning, Bakersfield and surrounding communities, and everybody watching online on YouTube at the Early Bird Special. This is the Early Bird Special. I am Chris Burdick. That is Sparky. Sparky, good Friday morning.
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, my friend. Let them know what they're in for today.
Oh, we're going to talk Shador.
Of course.
No, I'm just playing. We are going to do a little Shador talk, but we're going to recap the draft from last night, the first round, and what we expect in round 2 and 3 today. We'll recap the NBA playoffs going into the weekend. Then we at 7:30 we'll have our boy Chris Flail, local comedian, and you guys are gonna love this guy. And he also likes wrestling, so he fits in perfectly.
Absolutely.
And then at 8:30 we'll wrap up the show with Bolt Brady and his bro, the handicapper. And I need some insight on some NBA games this weekend because I need groceries.
You need groceries.
And groceries ain't cheap. I work 2 jobs, but it's still. You got a teenage boy that eats you out of a house.
This is very true. And if there's anybody that can help you win money, it's Bolt Brady, top 5% in win percentage.
And then we'll end the show with what we always end the week with is what are we watching?
Absolutely.
Besides the NBA playoffs and the draft.
That's pretty much going to take up all of our time this weekend, I'm sure. But
you're a Falcons fan.
Absolutely. And my team made some pretty key moves yesterday. I liked the move to get back into the first round. Obviously didn't expect it, but I mean, making a trade with the LA Rams was pretty nice. I'm not crazy about the pick, but we'll get into that in a second. Let's start with the first 10. Obviously, the first 3 went exactly the way we thought. You got Cam Ward going number 1. The Browns not exactly how we thought. In order, they went the way we thought. But the teams obviously had changed. I totally forgot about the big trade in the beginning. The Jacksonville Jaguars making a move up to number 2 to get Travis Hunter. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that one?
I knew that we were expecting some big things from Jacksonville. It was rumored that they were going to get in the mix. We did not expect it to be with number 2.
No.
I thought they were going to trade up with New England is what I thought and get Genty. But no, they shocked the world and got into number 2, thankfully, with Cleveland doing Cleveland things. And they were able to snag Travis Hunter, which helps Trevor Lawrence, I will say, because that is a star that's going to be perfect in Jacksonville. And he's probably praising the Lord that he didn't have to go to Cleveland.
Yeah.
He looked happy. And
well, now let's pump the brakes here, though, because
it's got to be better than Cleveland.
Any team, though, that is sprinting to at least the same monikers as Cleveland and the Jets is the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Well, they have a 34, 35-year-old GM, and you could tell he was playing Madden last night.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a great move. Don't get me wrong. I like this move for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And with this team, you will most likely see Travis Hunter playing both sides. We'll get him playing cornerback, I think, the majority of the time with some scheme packages that allow him to play wide receiver. Personally, I think that is the more wise way to go about this. They could go the exact opposite. We don't know yet. But all in all, I think this move is pretty good. It got more draft picks to the Cleveland Browns, which I think you're happy if you're a Cleveland fan. And if I'm not mistaken, it got them the first-round draft pick for the Jaguars next year.
Yes.
Which is going to be huge, especially if this doesn't work out for the Jacksonville Jaguars like they're hoping it will, and they're still down in the bottom 10 of the NFL next year.
So they still got a top 5 pick. They moved back, 3 spots?
Yeah.
And they got Mason Graham, the defensive tackle from Michigan, which is a stud.
Which, we were sitting here talking about Abdul Carter being a great pairing for Myles Garrett, but we never even considered Mason Graham being the guy next to him who could equally be as much of a game changer and a game wrecker on the defensive line for the Cleveland Browns. Now, obviously, it's a different position. He's going to be playing probably more of a defensive tackle than a defensive end, but still sitting him next to one of the best in the game and Myles Garrett, I think this is going to be a great move forward for the Browns defense. And it makes them a little more stout going forward as well when you're taking on teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Baltimore Ravens all the time. I mean, you have to do something to slow down the running games.
And Cleveland being Cleveland, like I said, the last time they traded out of the first round was with the Atlanta Falcons.
Absolutely. And it was to get my guy, Julio Jones. Oh,
And I
one of the
was
greatest trades.
going down the list of what Cleveland got out of that Julio trade.
Yeah, please let them know who they got out of that trade. Please.
They got defensive tackle Phil Taylor,
Who?
running back Trent Richardson, which
Huh.
was short lived.
I mean, well, are we going to bring up the fact that Trent Richardson probably had the worst ever running back or ball carrier vision of all time?
Yes. Wide
Mhm.
receiver Greg Little.
Who?
Yeah, quarterback Brandon Whedon and running back Owen Marek-Cheek. And none of those players did jack.
No.
0 Pro Bowls.
Well, I mean, you notice how I didn't say anything about Whedon because, like I said, I will refrain from talking ill of anybody who played quarterback for the Cleveland Browns or the New York Jets. You did everybody a service by filling a job that nobody wanted.
But going down those top 10, New England addressed that offensive line. They got a big LSU boy, which will help that team. But Genty did land to the Raiders, which I was shocked.
And honestly, from everything I've been saying, Raider Nation, very happy with the pick. And what I thought was also pretty interesting, because he was picked at 6, this automatically makes Genty the number 2 paid running back in the entire league, right underneath Saquon Barkley.
$31.8 million guaranteed.
Phew.
Now he is the number 2, like it said, right below Saquon, and about $7 million more than McCaffrey will make.
Now, here is the devil's advocate question, though, that I want to pose to you, my friend, because I asked the same question to all of my Raider friends that were super excited about this pick. Is he any different than Josh Jacobs?
I think he's got better vision. I think he'll fit with Pete Carroll's offense. It's just like JR told me this morning. It's all really on Geno, how well Geno plays, and that scheme. I think Pete Carroll will do well with the running game. I think Genty will fit in perfect, but it's all going to be up to what Geno can bring, and that offensive line helps.
Absolutely. And let's not forget Shedeur Sanders still on the board. So if you're a Raider fan, there's a possibility you get him in the second round. My only argument is this. You were looking to make a giant leap forward. Although Genty fills a spot and he's a very exciting player to be, or to get around per se, you still needed to build stuff around him. And I don't see this pick being a major game changer outside of what you already had a couple years ago. I think Josh Jacobs is essentially what you're going to get with this pick. Is not at the best. I think he'll be better if he obviously is projected the way if he plays the way he is projected. But Josh Jacobs came in the exact same way. Big guy, but had explosive runs at Alabama. And I argue that he played against harder competition because he played at Alabama. So I don't know. Maybe this is just me being a skeptic. But
I think they addressed the wide receiver today in round 2 or 3.
If they have a shot at Shedeur, I feel like they take Shedeur.
I mean, Geno's not going to get any help with the receiving core that they have now.
Not at all.
Unless they make some more splashes, because there is some receivers on the market right now. We talked about Pickens yesterday. Tyreek's been in the news. I mean, can you imagine that? Tyreek with the Raiders and Genty.
I could see either of those guys, honestly, on the Raiders next year.
And if DK wouldn't have, jumped the gun, he could have very well been a Raider. So.
Yeah, that's also true. But I think he is very happy going to Pittsburgh. And I think, once they address their quarterback situation, it'll all be a completely different conversation.
And were you surprised with the Saints going with the line instead of quarterback?
Yeah, honestly, I really was. I have a couple friends that are New Orleans fans as well. They love to call and give me grief as I am a Falcons fan, but not at all what I thought they were going to go with. However, I think it was because, and I stand by this from my mock draft yesterday, Carolina Panthers taking the wide receiver McMillan out of Arizona, I think threw a monkey wrench in their plan. I think that they had all of the plan in the world to go in picking McMillan, but because he was off the board, you take the next best guy on your board, which would have been the tackle from Texas. This is a good pick for them because obviously they need to address a lot of offensive line problems. So this isn't a step backwards if you're the Saints. However, I think that there were better tackles on the board. Ergo, the 31st pick, Simmons from Ohio State, who 32nd, he got to the Chiefs at the very bottom. How he dropped all the way to the bottom of the first round, I'll never know.
It's because he's coming off a big injury.
True, but I mean,
But
again,
Kansas City scored gold right there at the end.
yes, they did. That's a steal for them. So I think this is a good pick for the Saints in terms of building that offensive line, but I don't think this was intentionally or what they intended to be their first round pick.
So what do you think rounding out the top 10? I know you talked off the air, but the Bears snagging Loveland at the tight end position.
That one was interesting until it was brought to my attention that he is very much a Sam Laporta style tight end. And you have to remember who's coming in as their new head coach, Ben Johnson, who is trying to build essentially what he had in Detroit there in Chicago. And they needed a tight end like that he can rely on to be the big guy to break some tackles and get some yards up the field. The only thing they're missing right now is still that big, the big bruiser like running back, which you still could potentially get in this, second, third round of this
There's
draft.
plenty of running backs left.
Absolutely, that are pretty good. One being Cam Scatterbro from Arizona State, in my personal opinion. But we'll see what they want to go with here in the second round. I like the move, though. I think it was a much needed situation because I've never been a huge fan of Cole Kmet. And I know everybody was super high on Cole, but I think Loveland is a better fit for what Chicago wants to do going forward. And it just makes a lot more sense if I'm making any sense that way. He just fits the mold better of what Sam Laporta is in Detroit. And that's kind of what you want to go with here.
And then I wasn't too shocked, but the Cowboys going offensive line,
So
I thought for sure they're going to go with the wow factor.
You didn't even take the best guard off the board, in my opinion. I get they took the best guard off the board in terms of who he played against because you took Cooper from Alabama.
Did you like the Ohio State guy?
I like the Ohio State guy a little bit better, but I also like the South Dakota guy, Zurich, I believe, or something. I started with a Z. I can't remember exactly how to pronounce it, but the one that Seattle ended up taking a couple picks later. I like him better, but I don't know. Cowboys also went in saying that they were going to find some sort of target for Dak or maybe a massive defensive star, and then passed on Walker, who, thank goodness, went to the Atlanta Falcons at 15. But it didn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, I get that you're trying to fill the void on the offensive line since Zach Martin and all that stuff has moved on, and obviously you're losing a lot of the old mainstays in your offensive line.
Oh yeah, they've been losing guys every
left
year.
and right. Yep. I mean, Tyron Smith, I believe, did he just retire as well? Or he's at least getting close to, if not that he has retired
this last year.
Yeah. So you have to address that too. I get it. But I thought for sure you'd go for a wide receiver here and take maybe Golden from Texas. But I don't know. That was my thoughts on. What did you think?
And Golden ended up that's the receiver Green Bay snack,
yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I was shocked because hearing Jerry all week, throwing up the smoke screens, thinking, okay, they're going to go for a wow factor, a big receiver. They were either going to trade back, or I was expecting maybe a big trade.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody like Pickens or Tyreek even. But when you address the offensive line, I can't be mad at it because a lot of teams that are right in the middle of the pack, it's because of their offensive line or defensive line. So going up to the next pick was Miami. And I thought for sure we're going to get the boy out of Georgia. I was all excited. And then I started to think more. I was like, okay, well, if we address the secondary, I know that's a big hole, especially if they trade Ramsey. And then they snagged the defensive tackle,
Kenneth
Grant, which more video I watched afterwards, I was like, okay, well, after losing Wilkins a couple years ago, we definitely needed that, especially with all the injuries. Sealer is a stud, and he needed that Wilkins type big run stopping guy. And I think he was one of the best run stoppers in this draft. But I'm not one of these sports guys that'll be grading players because they haven't had one snap on the field. But I will go to a John Gruden clip from this morning, how he was talking about Kenneth Grant.
There you go, Coach. First big call of the night for Coach John Gruden. Actually, I don't know that.
It might have been my favorite player in the whole draft.
You love this guy.
This guy comes out of the stack, man. You want to throw a bubble screen over there? Kenneth Grant will walk you down, man.
Listen to him.
He comes out of the trash. This guy plays his ass off. I love Kenneth Grant. He's a 3 technique, a guy that can play on the outside shoulder of the guard, and he can move. He's a great football player at Michigan. I love this pick.
Let me say this,
hey,
Coach.
You need to cheer up, Frank the Tanker. I'm never going to go trade baseball cards with you again.
So I'm going to go with Gruden. Hopefully he was right.
this could be that Wilkins type player that you guys have been missing the last couple years. So I really liked this pick. I know everybody was super high on Mason Graham, the other defensive tackle out of Michigan, and as they should be, he's really good as well. But everything that I was reading coming into this, one was that defensive line. This is going to be an incredible defensive line draft. If your team needs that, your D tackles, maybe your inside nose tackles. There's a lot of those type of guys in this draft. And I think you guys got one of the better ones that was kind of going under the radar a little bit. He is the one that really was the game wrecker if you watched Michigan. Although Mason had his moments of like making the major plays, Grant was really the one that was taking up a lot of the attention because he was wrecking the rest of the game. So I think that this is a really good pickup for you guys going forward. I actually was more confused why everybody hated the pick after you.
Yeah, of course.
Tyler Warren getting picked up by the Colts.
Yeah, I saw an F grade. And
That
I
is
was like, what?
incredible. Like, first and foremost, for anybody to give anything an F right now is ridiculous.
Yes.
We don't know. You don't know if this is going to be awful or not. I saw people talking about the Atlanta trade back in with the Rams, that pick being an F.
That's all I heard this morning.
I will give you that James Pierce has issues with being coached. I understand that. That's all I've read is this guy's not coachable. You can get over that. All you need is somebody that commands his respect. And honestly, it's real easy to not have respect for somebody or your coaching staff when you're a rookie that hasn't stepped foot on the field yet. When the veterans see that you aren't showing respect, you will be put in line very quickly.
Well, I love the Walker pickup. I don't know much about the second guy. I know my boy LaTroy is a big Rams fan. We were texting back and forth last night. And once they traded out, because he was thinking, okay, the Rams are going to get Shedeur and sit behind Stafford for a year, and then he would come in.
Which is also possible.
But he said, I can't be mad because what they traded the Rams, he said they get a first round next year. And, if it doesn't work out, then, Atlanta's that maybe a top 15 pick next year.
Exactly.
And the Rams are setting up for, the exit of Stafford. So maybe they get 2 first rounders next year, looking at a better quarterback class. So we'll see.
Oh, it's going to be a better quarterback class next year. I guarantee you that. But at this point, I agree with you because Atlanta going into next year, you have to worry about the sophomore slump with Penix. You have to worry about how the rest of the team is going to come in. Injuries are always a problem. And being an Atlanta Falcons fan, we are notorious for being underwhelming at certain times. So it's entirely possible the Rams just picked up a top 15 draft pick from Atlanta next year, in which, like you said, you can pick up a much better quarterback than you ever could in this year's draft. So,
well, we'll take a break right now. We'll wrap up our thoughts on the first round of the draft. Later in the show, we'll go down the second round, what we're expecting right here on ESPN Bakersfield, 12:30 a.m.
101.1 FM. Welcome back.
The NFL schedule was yeah, a date was announced.
Can we talk about that for a second? I get that the NFL is a television show. I totally understand that.
Soap
And
opera.
well, no, that's wrestling. WWE is soap
It's getting
opera.
there.
It's the telenovelas of the sports world. No, I get that you want to make it a spectacle, and honestly, the draft looked way better at Lambeau than I expected it to be completely honest. Now, the top-down shots, I think you can live without because, I mean, you're just showing a quarter full football stadium at that point. But from the fan view, it looked really cool. The opening with all of the bikes and stuff like that, and Clay Matthews and all the players and Lil Wayne and stuff like that. That was really cool. But why did we need to stop the NFL draft 9 picks in for 10 minutes for two ladies who, for as great as they are on television, clearly had a rehearsed situation going on there, and it was just awfully done. Like, this lady pointed 15 seconds after she addressed the crowd. I don't know if you caught that. She said, "All of us here." Point. That was I'm like, dude, at that point, I'm like, why are we doing this? All for you to say that the NFL schedules are going to be announced on May 25th. Thanks. Put a bit an X tweet or whatever you want to call that. I don't know exactly what we call those anymore, but why are we wasting 15 minutes of the draft? And maybe it was because these picks came in so quickly and they weren't expecting it, so they needed to eat up time.
Well, it was just like the
But
first pick.
yeah, like
Or there was so many different times where they took breaks and announced this or that. I mean, there was the Disney stories that they do every year, but it was spread out. More I was more surprised that the draft ended earlier than I was expecting. I was able to watch basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, it's because the picks came in so quickly. And I think it's because everybody came into this obviously knowing what they wanted to do in the first round, whether you wanted to trade out, trade in, get whatever player you want. Let's also reiterate that this is a weaker draft. You're not going to get a superstar probably in this draft, although we've been wrong before. And this could all be false. And everybody in this first round could be a superstar for all we know. But as far as we could tell coming in, there aren't any major superstars outside of your Travis Hunters, your Abdul Carters, your Cam Wards, maybe your Shedeur Sanders. And it shows when all of the teams in the draft were pretty much ready to pick 3-4 minutes into their 10-minute pick. I think the only one that really took the entire time was Atlanta. And I really do. And I honestly don't know why we took all 10 minutes to pick Walker, the best linebacker on the board. Like,
That's the second year in a row that Atlanta took a guy I wanted, but
I mean, hey,
it happens.
Terry Fontenot, for as much as I hate on the guy, I like that he's active. I like that he's trying. Now, have his hits landed more than his misses? Absolutely not. This guy misses more often than not, unfortunately, or at least from what we've seen so far. The only one that's really been a stud for us is Drake London. Everybody else, it's all been Dimitrioff right before him.
Well, that's a lot of. I mean, that's just the draft overall. They can make such a big story about every single thing,
right?
But the odds are, a lot of these players aren't going to pan out. They spend a whole year pumping up this player that usually doesn't pan out. But there was players that I was expecting to go in the first that I didn't know. Whether it was an injury concern that teams, just kind of put up the flag. I was expecting Will Johnson from Michigan to go in the first. I was kind of expecting Shedeur to land late first round. I was kind of shocked that I know you weren't, but the Giants getting back in and snagging Dart.
Picked the exact team that they were going to trade for and pick, just pointing that out there.
Which is probably, I mean, I usually wouldn't give the Giants any props, but it's probably a smart pick over Shedeur. But we'll see, because I haven't seen either one of them play on an NFL field.
Right.
And then the Mike Green thing that I thought was going to at least make it like late mid first round.
I am genuinely disappointed that Atlanta didn't take Mike Green with that final pick in the first round. They took James Pierce, which again, I've already stated that I do believe he's going to be fine. I think all you have to do is just essentially, again, take control of his respect, make him believe in whatever you're trying to produce on the field. And I think you're going to get a really good defensive end. But I didn't know about the Will Johnson injury. You had told me this when I got it this morning, because that was one of the main confusion or main weird points to me, was why Will Johnson was still on the board, the best corner in the draft, really, in my opinion. And I thought Atlanta would take him, honestly, with 26 or that 26 pick. But I mean, if it's a long-standing knee injury, I get it. Especially at the corner position, you have to be able to shift and do a lot of really tough things. And if you can't handle that with your, with past injuries, longevity wise, your career is not going to be there. I know you could shine in the first 2-3 years, but these teams are looking 4, 5, 6 years down the line. And if you're not going to be a good investment, they're not going to be able
especially
to.
The money they're going to make or pay for a first rounder.
Yeah.
But do you, to wrap up this segment before we bring in Chris Flail, do you see Shedeur going early today?
I have to really think about it, but I do think he goes today. You look at the first 10 picks of today, you got 2 in Cleveland alone. Cleveland still has the 33rd pick, and obviously with the trade with the Jacksonville Jaguars, now they have the 36th pick as well. The Raiders could take them with the 5th pick at 37. So yeah,
the Saints at 40.
The Saints at 40, exactly. So there is a good possibility he goes very early in the second round. I'm not 100% sure when. If he slides any longer than that, though, I'd be surprised. I don't understand why. I know the arrogance factor has been thrown around there, and obviously he didn't help his case with what he said last night.
Well, this is Shedeur.
Yeah.
And after the first round ended.
We all didn't expect this, of course, but I feel like with God, anything possible, everything possible. I don't feel like this happened, for no reason. All this is, of course, fuel to the fire. And under no circumstance, we all know this shouldn't have happened. But we understand we're on the bigger and better things. Tomorrow's the day. We're going to be happy regardless. Legendary.
Ooh.
Now, 2 things. One, all of that would have been great had you not said, we all know this shouldn't have happened. That's where really you're going to turn a lot of
house
people
full
off.
Of celebrities and family members.
I know.
And then to say something.
Because the draft constantly went back to his viewing room. I don't know if you noticed this. The couch that said legendary, nobody was sitting in it. Not a single person was sitting in it. And I'm like, dude, this is such a bad look. This is why people call you arrogant. And that's my thing. That's why I kind of understand why he slid down this far. It's kind of like the Aaron Rodgers situation. They want somebody that's more humble, that they believe can lead their guys from the get-go and not just walk in and believe he's better than everybody on the field. Because you're going to have to earn your keep regardless. You're still a rookie.
Yeah.
But this was just a really bad look. And to go out there that night and release this video, it just doesn't make you look any better. I do expect him to go, though, in the top 10 picks of today.
I'm thinking the more I think of it, I think it's going to be the Raiders.
It makes a lot of sense.
I wouldn't be shocked if Cleveland just gets him off the board with the first pick today. But we will see what we will see. We have plenty to talk about, not only NBA, but there's a little WWE talk. It is Friday.
Yes, Friday Night SmackDown
It's
tonight.
the first SmackDown since WrestleMania, so we'll talk a little bit about that. Plus, Chris Flail has a comedy show tonight that we'll hear about right after this break on the Early Bird Special, ESPN Bakersfield, 12:30 a.m.
101.1 FM.
Pump you up. Wake you up on this Friday. This is the Early Bird Special. I'm Sparky. That's Bardic. We got Chris Flail, the one and the only Chris Flail. How are you this morning? Appreciate it. Anytime. So I know you have a comedy show. I have to throw out a big shout out to my boy Tom Maxwell that I was talking to last night. And I let him know, hey, we'll have a Flail on this morning. He said, oh man, that's a really, really good guy. And any love for Timber is always good. You know, we talk a lot about the Well because it is the only full-time comedy place in town, and will continue once they move into the new venue. And we were talking to Tyson yesterday, and how we were expecting, with a lot of moving with businesses, people will take breaks.
Right.
No, all these comedies or all these local comedians are jumping all over the place. You can find them everywhere until the big move, and it'll be a full-time thing. We talked to Betts about, it was the day before the final show.
I believe so, yeah, or at least the day of the final show,
which I was able to go to and say my goodbyes to that horrible building.
I mean, that thing had been like 4 or 5 different things before they got out of there too.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember growing up. What was the venue called before?
Oh, B Riders.
B Riders. Yes. Yeah. Many times I had to step over the puke when I walked in to see a horrible 90s rock band. But
it's funny you mentioned, I'm sure Dan brought this up, but for the first few months that we were doing things there, people would wander in for shows and be
Yeah.
very
Confused what's going on. Yeah.
why is nobody fighting in this hallway right now?
Why isn't Static X not playing?
A bottle hasn't broken yet. What's happening?
Yeah,
I'm not
that's
used to
right.
this.
So just going back to comedy, how did you get into doing comedy? Is that something you just fell into, or?
Yeah, so I grew up in Northeast Pennsylvania, a little small town boy, and I grew up loving, comedy my whole life. So watch Comedy Central stand up and all those big, back when it was Dave Attell and Nick Swartzen and Mario Cantone, you'd watch all these 20-year comics do half hours, and I loved it. But because I was such in the backwoods in the middle of nowhere, it never occurred to me that you could
Actually
do it. So then I went to school in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is a city about the size of Bakersfield. So they had a comedy club there, and I just started going out and watching everything I could. But that was the first time I saw road guys. Like it wasn't Dave Attell.
Yes.
It was Cowboy Jim who came out and did 45 minutes about his cowboy hat, and he was doing, DJ hit my music, and his big closer was dancing to pump up the jam.
Right.
And so I saw that, and I was like, well, I know I could do that. And they had an open mic. And it took me about a month or two to work up the courage to even put my name in. It was a drawing. You would put your name in, and if you got drawn out, you would perform 4 minutes of clean comedy the next week. If you did 4 minutes and 30 seconds, they cut your mic and you never came back. If you cursed, they cut your mic and you never came back. So I finally pulled a yes after 3 or 4 weeks, and then panicked. And then I spent the next 6 months. I moved out here shortly afterward, and we used to do. So we started, I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on the name. It was next up Martini's Lounge.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Before all of the, all of the incidents that happened. Rough place.
Yes.
So I spent my first 6 months of comedy just hoping each open mic got rained out so I wouldn't have to get on stage.
So is that a normal thing? I've talked to a lot of comedians that got started kind of the same way, with the open mic scene, and they would say, it was almost better to get a bad show just to shake it off. Okay. And I have to learn from these mistakes. And I watched my first comedy show here in town. I watched at the Rocket Shop Cafe.
Yeah.
And I got to see Betts, and that's when I met him and Boydston and all these guys. And that was, a hole in the wall. And I was like, walked in, I was like, am I at the right place? There is a rocket right on
you
the
look
roof.
around and you go, where would the
But
show
Martini's,
be?
man, that pool is way deeper than that one. So how long you been doing it?
I've been doing it 11 years now, and you're absolutely right with that. I think it is better to have some disasters up front, because you'll see, you try to coach new comics on this all the time, is there's two different routes. It can happen that way, or you can have it. There's a lot of guys who start that they have a really good support system, and that's great. So the first couple open mics they have 30, 40 of their friends and family come out to see them.
Right.
And they come off stage and their uncles go, you were funnier than anybody there, because they love them.
Of course,
and they know
it's a
them.
family.
And then you do that for a month or two, and those people stop coming. And then you do your first show for a crowd that has no reason to like you, and it goes poorly.
Get off
And
the
it's so much more hurtful. Yeah.
We actually heard about I think it was Tyson that was telling us.
Is it Tyson or Anthony? I can't remember which one.
It was a young girl that did, her first open mic, and she killed it.
Nice.
And she was like, I'm good. I can do this. And she said the second one was the worst day of her life. She said everything just wasn't coming out right. She said she had to go back to the drawing table and start, just start over.
It'll make you rethink life, some of those drives home.
So have you seen, I know you did a lot of things over at the Well, but have you seen with the open mics, a lot of comedians not return after that first gig?
Especially I've seen it in two kinds. The one I just described, that they have everything seems great for the first 2 months until they have to do Strangers. And then there's also there's two different personality types that you'll see normally play out on stage. It's the open micer's first time who looks panicked, and 30 seconds feels like 2.5 hours. That's usually coming from a more thoughtful person that's terrified really mean to them.
Right, absolutely.
And then you'll see the maniac that gets up there and thinks that this is their 2.5 hour Hulu special.
Yes.
And they're like, I've been waiting my whole life for this. Those ones usually wash out more quickly.
So
I'm the next Gabriel Iglesias.
That's it. Every seasoned comic has had 100 6-week comedians comedians club and say, yeah, I'm about to go on the road. I think I've got an hour 15, and
And it
No, you're
sizzles
not.
out.
20 seconds
Yeah,
maybe.
maybe.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're both big comedian fans. I've watched comedy, ever since growing up in the 80s. I would used to steal my dad's VHSs and watch, Raw and Delirious and George Carlin and go all the way back, the Cheech and Chong records. I would play in the closet and listen, make sure my parents weren't coming home yet. And just seeing the growth of the comedy scene here in town is just amazing. I had no idea we had this much talent here in town. And going to the open mic shows, going to, even when we went and saw Kevin Hart, we went and seen. I'll bring it back a horrible story, but my ex-wife, I took her. She was a big Dane Cook fan.
Nice.
And it was during that big year when he was just blowing up everywhere. Yes, and I took her to Fresno to see him at the Save Mart.
Oh God.
And he came out probably an hour late, looked
Oh, wow.
coked out of his mind, and he had security with him. And I was like, what the hell is, like, he's not that big, is he? And he did 20 minutes and, ran off stage. And I was like, okay, but I've gotten more respect for the comedians that do the open scenes, the ones that come out and do 20, 30 minutes.
Right.
And you see the more passion in type of those. And even like the Kevin Hart's, I've seen him, he killed it for 2 hours straight. So it's just, I don't know if it's a bad night or it's the bad.
There's
just a bad
definitely
night?
that, but I think there is a thing when you see these comedians. Comedy now has evolved to stadium comedy. They're
Mhm.
doing comedy for 60, 70,000 people. And we look at that all the time. And just like you said, the scene here, the Well coming to town, they said for over a decade, you couldn't put a club here because it's too close to LA. It doesn't make sense. And we did it, and the scene built it and grew. Like you said, Tembler started 8 or 9 years ago, 225 to 350 seat venue, grew. It wasn't just the Fox Theater, and it's all the comics in town here. You don't know their names as a household name. They haven't been on Netflix, but they work here. There are, I'd say, 8 comics that are in over a decade are the funniest people that I've come across live in this town, and hopefully someday you know them. But they work. And what I think happens is when you get to the stadium comedy level, or you get to Dane Cook, where he was in Employee of the Month and 3 or 4 other movies, and now he's a movie star. Everybody in the world, he's the giant MySpace guy. I don't know, once you get to we're like blues musicians. Once you get famous, it kind of tramples on the art form a little bit, because how do you work through something that's not that good when you've got 10 to 30,000 people that will fill a room to watch you read the phone book and feel like it's the greatest night of their life? But then what happens is, for posterity, you put something on Netflix or put something on Hulu, and it's not your fan base that just adore you from the gate. And that's when the world realizes that you didn't polish the stone here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like one of my favorite comedians, Louis C.K. I've always wanted to see him. And every time I run into Dan, we've talked about this for probably 8, 9 years, but my bucket list is go to the Comedy Store. I don't care who's headlining. I just want to be there, be around the room. And, just going to any comedy show, I try to get there early because I usually enjoy the opening shows. And just going to the Well, I lived down the street from it. So when I would go down on a Wednesday, Thursday night, I'd take the wife out to eat and would stop by and see, an hour or two. And I'd always find another new comedian. I'm like, well, I'm going to start following this guy. This guy's going somewhere. So it's really cool to hear the inside of that. So you have a show tonight at Tembler.
Tonight, Tembler Brewing, 7 p.m. And I'm bringing one guy from town that's one of those funniest guys I've worked with for a decade, Joe Alaniz, and bringing 2 other comics, one from LA, one who's in LA now but from New York, spent some time living in Australia, 25-year pros that have been on everything, Amazon Prime, iHeartRadio, Sirius XM. They've been doing it for every club and show you can imagine. So really excited to have them back out here for a show.
Right on. So they get the tickets at the door, or they go online?
Tickets you can get them on Eventbrite. It's the title of the show is Chris Flail and His Very Funniest Friends on Eventbrite, or you can get them at the door as well.
Yeah, we'll see it. You'll see it on our Instagram as well. You could follow Chris Flail Comedy on Instagram. Burdick, You want to throw in anything before we get into some sports?
But no, we got to just get into the sports side of this. Obviously, we hear that you're a wrestling fan and a basketball fan, so we got to drop the NBA team first, though. Who you like?
I was just talking to Sparky about this. I guess by default I'm a Lakers guy, but I bounce back and forth just based on players. I think this is going to be the toughest series for them to get out of.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I love Minnesota. I just don't know if Anthony Edwards has matured as a player to take his team to a title. It's coming, but I watched that. I'll be curious what you all think about it. But I watched that game too, where I thought they had a chance to try to put a foot on the Lakers' neck, and he's joking around with LeBron, and they just did not seem like a champion. You watch the Celtics play a game 2, game 3 right now. They're ready to knock a team out.
Right.
I'm not seeing that yet. I'm still seeing happy to be there from Minnesota. I think there's another year or two.
No, I think that's a really good point. Honestly, that there seems to be some sort of killer instinct that they're missing at the base level of it all. But I also just don't think they've been put. I guess their backs haven't been put up against the wall. You have to remember they were going in 1-0, already thinking we're going back home with a lead anyway. Yeah. They're automatically thinking they're going to win these next two. Personally, I think they will win these next two because I don't know if the Lakers really have the killer instinct to make this go further than the first round right now, or at least not what we've shown, because you haven't scored more than 100 points yet.
Right.
So how are we going to know if LeBron and Luka are going to work if the rest of you aren't going to buy into this either? Because you need guys like Jackson Hayes to step up. You need guys like Austin Reeves to step up. And we haven't seen that yet from the Lakers.
Well, I think
I don't know if they've had enough time to figure out a true identity for the team.
Yes.
Is this offense going to run through LeBron? Is LeBron going to take more of a 4 and 5 role on offense and let it run through Luka?
I think that's what needs to happen. I think he needs to run a little bit more of what Anthony Davis did and let Luka run the team.
I think that's that veteran presence is LeBron, just like game 2. I think he's just like kind of just, okay, we'll play when we want to. And I think it's one of the things that kind of what you were saying about Minnesota. I think the Lakers are just like, all right, we'll put it on the gas pedal when we want to. And I think if they go down 2-1 or whatever, I think the Lakers get out of it, but it's going to be uphill. And I think they're trying to find that presence and what kind of offense they're going to be running with Luka. I think they look better when LeBron kind of steps back and does the role player and let Luka shoot the hell out of it.
Yeah. How do you guys feel about the evolution of the game in the last couple? Are you cranky old heads like me?
No.
You spread the floor.
I love the 3-point shot. It just gives little white boys like me a chance to make the league.
I played basketball my whole life, so I'm more of a defensive minded. That's what the coaches always drilled into us.
As long as we don't get crazy and make a 4-point play or something like a 4-point line, I'm cool with that.
It's like NBA Jam or something.
Like I'm cool without the 4-point line or making it worse like that. But I don't have a problem with it at all.
What I struggle with that makes me miss the old heads is, again, talking about Boston. They may be the best team in the league right now, but there's nights where they shoot 60 3-pointers a game. And like last night, I don't know if you got to see the game last night, Oklahoma City, Memphis.
Yes.
To me, there's so much of that going on in the league right now because of the metrics where the 3-point shot rules all 3-pointers or dunks. It just looks like too much. They were down 29 points and came back to win by 6. It just feels like a lot of times, instead of back in the day, it was a little more grinded out and maybe boring to watch, not as many points be scored, but it was grinded out, isolated, good basketball. And sometimes I feel like you're just watching two teams take turns playing awful basketball.
Right. Like you're watching the Globetrotters or something.
Well, I've seen better basketball at Silver Creek Park sometimes, man. And running that I'm the old triangle Phil Jackson days where, I enjoyed the defensive mind and then they would run an offense. But now you're getting a guy getting the ball, shooting, drilling it up, not even running a play or anything, just shooting the threes from almost half court. And I mean, that's the ugly part of it. But mine is where we only get defensive minded, good defense played after the All-Star game, maybe a month before the playoffs. Okay, now it's time to play basketball. Right. So I think they're going to end up having to make some changes. But sadly, I think the GM is the players type GM. So I think this is only probably going to get worse.
Yeah.
I mean, the evolution of the game is really headed towards it's the players league now, but I don't know, the game itself changing. I think that's just organic. I think it's been a thing for a long time. You've seen it change from the 80s to the 90s to now. The only thing that's really different that I don't care for is the fact that it's not as rough as it used to be back in the 90s. I think you should let these guys play defense a little bit more and get a little more handsy and actually like hand check each other like they used to.
Sure.
But outside of that, I mean, you can't really tell me that you can't adjust your game to stop somebody from shooting threes.
Sure. Yeah.
I think that's one of the big thing that a lot of people forget is, all they do is shoot threes. Okay, well then go stop them from shooting threes.
Yeah.
Like, I get it. It's Steph Curry. He can't miss, but you can put somebody taller than Steph Curry in front of Steph Curry and block the shot, can't you?
Play him full court.
Yeah, do something about it then. That's basketball. That's the whole point of it. I grew up with coaches saying, if you can't beat them, figure out a way to beat them. I'm sorry. I don't know exactly what to do for you.
Instead of changing the rules to adapt your game.
Exactly. Fix it in the way of adapting your game and actually stopping them first.
So you're way too early. Who do you think is going to win the championship this year?
This year? It's hard to bet against Boston, especially with Porzingis back now. It looks so insurmountable, and the path, the Eastern Conference slant, the path to get to the NBA championship has so much less resistance than the path through the Western Conference. I mean, it looks like a cakewalk now because Oklahoma City made it that way. But going through the Memphis, we don't have a problem in the West. Grizzlies last year in the first round is pretty wild as opposed to going through, Cleveland having to go through the Miami Heat, who, by the way, it says something toward Heat culture when you think of all the things that have happened that year. They've suspended, and tell me when I'm speaking out of school.
No, you're good.
I hate Miami.
Indefinitely suspended and traded their star player in the ugliest mess of the last couple of years.
Yes.
Their new star player now is their best player is Tyler Hero, who they've tried to trade the last 4 years.
Yeah.
Their key draft pick from 2 or 3 years ago, who was supposed to be their future, is on the bench and is rumored to have been in some sort of relationship with the wife of the coach. One of the players is being federally investigated for fixing games, and they still won the play-in tournament and got to the 8th seed. That's Heat culture.
They
It says something for Pat
That's
Riley.
absolutely true.
I don't know what it says, but it says something.
They put my Bulls, and that's why I'm hoping he's a Cavs fan. So I'm hoping that they sweep the Heat and I don't have to hear about him anymore.
I told you we would avenge you, and so far so good. So, but real quick before we get out of here, I know we only got a couple minutes left, but you're also a wrestling fan,
Big time wrestling guy.
So, and I know you said that you have a theory about what's going on, or at least what's happened in the last 2 years, right?
Yeah. With the Rock specifically.
Yeah, go ahead and hit us with it.
Okay,
I'm curious.
so because I know, Burdick, you're a big wrestling guy, and you didn't quit like me between the Attitude Era and the. I did. I like to say I'm a big wrestling fan until I'm in front of someone like Burdick, and I'm a casual to.
No, you're good.
I know the references of NXT and TNA, but
right.
I'm not.
I'm the same way.
I'm not even that much of a diehard either. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm not one of those people that can, spit out SummerSlam of 1982. That's not who I am at all. I'm just a devout fan. I've been watching since I've been a kid, so that's about the long and short of it.
So tell me what you think. Now, we know The Rock always comes back and has his nice cameos and all that, but he and his PR team are very savvy for what they need.
Mm-hmm.
He came back to ramp up for last year's WrestleMania and insert himself into the storyline.
Bolstered the ticket prices ridiculously too, because everyone knew he was going to be there.
Yes. I think his team is very savvy. At that time, there was a national election coming up. And the election beforehand, he made an endorsement that got him a lot of heat. And he's the biggest movie star in the world. I think that he saw the writing on the wall that it was coming down to have to make a decision, and he didn't want to have to step out there and do that this year. So he not only inserted himself back into the caricature of wrestling, but I think he purposefully inserted himself into the gutter of wrestling. I will be a bad guy and dive into the sewer.
I will be the new Vince McMahon.
I will curse every 3 or 4 words because if they ask me, I can't say no. Because if I have one movie flop, this is over. But I don't want to do this again. It's not my right. So I am getting into WrestleMania as the worst guy on the roster so that you cannot attach me to you
or anybody
for
else
other purposes.
He was a part of the story.
Oh, that's funny. It's funny too. He has that Martin Scorsese movie coming out here soon. It's I think in the next couple of years. Did you hear about that?
Oh no.
He's going to be in a Scorsese movie with DiCaprio and
didn't see
Emily Blunt. Apparently,
Really?
they're going to start shooting here pretty soon. And they were saying that if that flops, his entire movie career is over.
That's it, because the last one he did just had a
Mona?
tough go.
Mona?
Yeah, Moana 2. Oh, yeah, the Moana live action. Can't wait to see that. Him with hair again.
Yeah, and
That's
I thought
gonna
I
be
was
great.
crazy for thinking that, but in the last couple months, the backing off of the events has been like he doesn't want to be in this.
No,
Yes.
he's like, I don't really want to be a part of this storyline anymore, so I'm just going to leave.
He's Magic Johnsoning us. I'm not going to be
Yeah,
here.
it's
I'm
like,
not going to be a part of this.
stop planning on me being here.
Yeah.
It's okay.
We appreciate your time, brother. It's Chris Flail. Check him out. Timber tonight. Get your tickets at Eventbrite or check out our Instagram. We'll have all the info right there. Chris, have a good weekend. We'll see you tonight at Timber.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, brother.
All right. We'll wrap up the NFL draft in the next segment, and then we'll have Bolt Brady from Bolt Brady and Brothers on our last hour of the week right here on ESPN Bakersfield, 12:30 a.m.
101.1 FM. Welcome back. Early Bird Special, Hour 2 on this beautiful Friday morning. I'm Burdick. That's Sparky. I don't know why you're laughing. It's beautiful outside. I love
it is.
overcast weather.
Me
I
too.
love it.
Me too.
It makes me feel
I
like
was
I'm
just
at the
reading.
beach.
I was just reading a story. Breaking news: former Vikings running back Adrian Peterson was arrested in Hennepin County for reportedly driving while impaired. According to the jail roster, Peterson, 40 years old, was arrested and booked into jail for fourth-degree driving while impaired, a misdemeanor charge. And it looks like Peterson was pulled over at 3:20 a.m. this morning when a state trooper stopped a vehicle that was reportedly speeding on Highway 77. And yeah, he was going 83 in a 55.
Does it say what he was on, or if he
And
was...
he blew alcohol at 6.014. It's almost double.
K. Just K. You know what? K. Why can we not buy, or I shouldn't say buy, why can we not hire drivers? Like, at this point, you're a professional athlete. You have a ton of money. You can afford it. Pay someone to drive you places.
There's apps for this too.
Yeah,
Even if you don't want
Uber's
to
a
have a
thing.
driver, just Uber your ass home.
Well, no, actually, you know what? I won't even say that. Maybe Uber XL is something different, but like, I get why you don't want to take Ubers as somebody who's famous, because obviously it's going to be, well, for lack of a better term, normal people.
Yeah.
And when they
Would
get in
rather
your
see 'em-
car, you're going to be like, oh my God, it's so and so.
Would you rather be booked in jail with them?
I mean, fair.
What's the difference?
True. I say hire a driver. Hire
Yeah.
a driver. Why? This happens entirely too often. I mean, and then you got situations like Henry Ruggs situation, which we won't expand on any further. But you have this happen almost every offseason. I know Adrian's not in the league anymore, but you as a seasoned vet and somebody who is seen as one of the best running backs of all time, come on, man. You're better than this. Stop it. Anybody who drinks and drives, man, you're better than that. Stop it.
Yeah, there's
Get an Uber.
Uber your ass home or take a nap.
It's just ridiculous. And I mean, we can get into the Shannon Sharp thing later too if we want to, but
I've been holding off on that one just because, but now that he's either forced or stepped down temporarily.
Well, he says temporarily. Let's see how all of this goes first, because we're talking about ESPN, which is a conglomerate of Disney, which means they don't play, especially not with stuff like this. So we'll see.
Well, along with the NFL draft, also got the NFL some time to talk about the 18-game schedule,
Yes.
the tush push, and I don't know if you're in or out on the 18-game schedule. Obviously, if it wasn't such a rough sport, I would say year round. I mean, but baseball, has 1,042 games, and not only baseball, but there's other sports like the NBA. They could probably cut a little bit off the top,
Right.
considering the play-in is just a joke, and you're not even barely getting players to play half that season.
Mm-hmm.
But this is what Goodell had to say about the latest on the 18-game schedule.
The first thing is can you do it safely? Is it safe for our players? And as you know, we've made a lot of changes both to the offseason and the way we train our players, taking contacts out. We made the training camps much different and taking different drills out and the way they practice. There's no such as double sessions anymore. Mm-hmm. And even in the regular season, you don't pad up in the regular season anymore. And so we've really tried to make our game safely, working with the Players Association in a very constructive way. And, we'll continue to do that. From a fan standpoint, would they rather see another regular season game versus a preseason game? I think that's overwhelmingly yes. It's something we'll have to work with the Players Association and see, do you agree? And can we make the right changes to continue to make it safe for our players?
I am iffy on an 18-game season, only because the increase of injury possibility. I think that it would have been a better idea to just move the season forward a week and get rid of the preseason.
Yeah.
I mean, I know everybody's...
But that also screws with, they're going to have to find a different way, because how the NFL over the years have changed, how many practices teams can have in pads,
right,
and can actually tackle, and just, they've made so many different changes and limits and rules. And I think they're even talking about when the game is, or the schedule is expanded, excuse me, it's Friday. But the rules of some players would only have a certain amount of time that they would be able to play in the season. There's rules that it would add more players to the roster.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have, instead of the 53, you would have extra
have like
roster
60,
spots.
65. Yeah.
You'd have an
sure.
emergency quarterback position, just like they did last year.
Yeah.
So there's going to be changes to help with the amount of injuries, or, there's a certain amount of, I think there was like a limit of how many carries a running back can have.
Mm-hmm.
It is, I mean, it goes into the mathematical and the injuries. So they're looking into the science side of it as well.
Yeah.
But when it comes to it, at the bottom line, it's money.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's always about money, 100% about money. But again, devil's advocate here. thinking about it on that side, obviously you're taking it into the scientific part of how they're trying to at least figure out a lot of, especially about concussions, 100% about concussions and other injuries and how they can avoid them. But when it comes to just adding more bodies to a team, what is that necessarily saying from the league, though? You know what I mean? Like that we're so gung ho about, protecting our players longevity wise, but clearly all you're now saying is, well, no, we want to just extend the season and, well, more bullets in the gun, you still get to fire it, right?
Yeah.
So, like, what
If
does
your
that
guy gets hurt,
necessarily?
you have an extra one now.
Exactly. So it's like you have a extended mag. It's like,
Exactly.
but what, like, that actually kind of makes it worse in a way, because now we're just teeing up guys to have the injuries.
Yeah. Instead of defending it, you're just
Exactly. You're making it worse.
Yes.
You're upping the possibilities with more people. Like, don't get me wrong, more jobs, great.
Yeah. More money around.
Yeah, more people on rosters, fantastic. But at the end of the day, are we doing that because we're really worried about the injury problems? Or are we doing that because you just want more bodies on the field so you don't have to cancel a game?
It's the same thing about the international games.
Yeah.
A lot of the players aren't for it.
No.
But they continue to force it down our throat. I personally just don't care for getting up at 6 a.m. on my Sunday. But I'm not the one traveling and, having to turn around and play a Monday night the next week and across the country. So, after getting adapted to the hour changes and, not really practicing with what you're used to.
Right.
And then turning around and having, 2 or 3 days to get prepared. And it's always, it is just funny because teams like the Jaguars or whoever, is usually the bottom of the pack type team that has to travel. And then they set them up to play like Philly on Thursday night the next week. I'm like, well, what the hell? Like, at least give them a bye week after these international games. And that was the other thing I was going to bring up is if the regular season gets expanded, they've also threw in where teams would get 2 buys.
Yeah, you would need to. You would have to. Like, you can't keep adding games and not giving at least another bye week or some sort of rest time, because you're going to ruin these players. You're going to ruin them for the longevity of their lives, and then we're only going to get them playing for 5-6 years. Like, certain players, the Watt family, have all said that they would like to retire early just to preserve their bodies. That's why JJ retired at an early age, or I say early in quotes, but he didn't want to go throughout the rest of his life dealing with CTE and lingering body pains and et cetera, et cetera.
Well, when it comes down to this is why I ask you is, it's not really about Goodell and what he thinks.
No.
It's not really about the owners. I would want to hear more about the NFLPA players that have actually taken part and have had injuries or CTE, and players like, just players that play all season. Let's hear from the Mahomes. Let's hear from, people with, maybe Tua, if he can spit out a full sentence. When I'm just saying, like, let's hear from players that have injuries, have had to travel across the country and see how their bodies react after a full 17, 18 game season, and see what they think, whether that extra bye week or that extra check is really beneficial. Obviously, everyone knows it's beneficial for the league because they're going to make money. It's going to be another, whether we're watching football last year on 5 different streaming apps, obviously the price will go up on the Netflixes, the YouTube TVs, the Sunday tickets. And I'm still waiting on the NFL just has to get into the name of, okay, well, I'm a Dolphins fan. I live in California. Let me pay a flat amount to watch all the Dolphin games instead of having to bend over and pay, the $175 a month to watch the other 13 games I didn't really care about. So I think there's those things like that. And it goes right into the health of players like the tush push, which Goodell got into, and what he thinks is going to happen with the next meetings and their vote on the tush push.
Listen, there's strong views about, is this a football play? There's strong views about the safety of it. There's strong views about, listen, a couple of teams do it well, so what? That's a good thing, right? It brings innovation to the game. I think they're all valid views. The great thing about the NFL is we work on a vote system of 24 out of 32. We consider all those things. We have great data on this. And I think from that standpoint, I think we'll end up making the right decision.
See, again, I understand people's gripes on the safety of it because at first that was my gripe against the play, but it's already come out that that's absolutely false. There's no actual data that shows that there's any injuries added from this play. The only argument you have is it's not a football play, it's a rugby play. That's literally the only argument outside of they do it better than anybody else, so we have to stop them from doing it. It's just like our argument against basketball. If it's so bad that so many people are going out and shooting so many threes, stop them from shooting threes. There's an entire defense called, I don't know, zone defense made to slow down three-pointers sometimes.
Yeah.
There are things that are made to make this happen.
I think
good at doing those things.
I think the play is I won't talk about the health because we've heard from players like Kelsey, the centers that have to run it because it's really on the centers, their knees, and the ones that are getting stepped on and pushed on. But I do think, yes, it is a rugby play. And two, I think it is a handicap play for the defense. I think until they allow the defense to push their own players and be able to, we watched and talked about it before, but was it in the Super Bowl or the playoffs where they were going to flag the
NFC Championship game against Washington? Yeah,
where
the linebacker Luva was trying to jump over the top.
They were just going to give him the touchdown. I think we hit gold when we were talking about it a couple weeks ago when we said maybe there's an amount of times you can run it, or you adapt the defense where they can push players into it. But they've got to do something. I'm kind of sick and tired of hearing the health concerns about it because that looks like the only way they're going to be able to use that to ban the player. But they're going to have to do something.
Again, I get that, but my entire thought on this is actually kind of changed because I now am on more of the side of people are complaining about this because they can't figure it out.
Yeah,
stop it. And honestly, like, figure it out then. I don't know exactly what to tell you. Like, you've heard from people like Jason Kelsey who have said, dude, I went through this. It sucked for a while, but I mean, there was no reason to stop doing it. I never got hurt from it. The new center for the Eagles signed a full deal with the team. So obviously he's not that worried about running the play either.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really not that big of a deal. It's just the fact that people can't figure it out or can't mimic it. And it sucks for your team, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it's a play. And I heard the same thing from the Packers GM on Eisen's show earlier this week as he was in there for draft week. And of course he cornered him. He said, hey, are you doing this because you couldn't stop it? And of course he backtracks and says, I did this for the health of the players.
You guys did it more than anybody.
And he said, we ran it and we saw the injury concerns from our own players. So, I mean, you can pick a side with it. If you have a different comment on that, text it in 842-2000. What do you think about the tush push? I really don't. I don't see the health concerns, but I think it is a rugby play, and the NFL is going to do what the NFL always does. They're going to make the rule where it can be ran, but it's going to be difficult to run it because so-and-so can't be pushed, or the same thing they did with the Wildcat play, the same thing they're doing with just a lot of the penalties. They need to stop tweaking the game every year and let them play football.
Yeah.
Because every year we're going through 4 or 5 different changes, different rules to the game, and it's just taking away from the game.
I hate to say this, but I feel like the only time when this is going to get changed or at least addressed is when someone gets injured because of the play. Until that actually is shown, I don't think you have an argument that this is for the health of the players. There has yet to be anybody to get injured because of the play on the offensive line, defensive line, quarterback, running back, everybody. Nobody has gotten hurt because of this play. I agree with you that you need to allow defenses to adjust and do something crazy to make it work. The jumping over the top, I think, should be legal.
Yeah.
I've always thought that should be legal. That is a football play right there. But that's my point. Yeah. But that's my point. Like, I agree with you that the defenses, they need to lax off the defenses and allow some things to be okay during the tush push. Maybe you, like a quarterback sneak, or a kneel, you tell the official, say, hey, we're doing the tush push. So allow them to know we're doing the tush push.
And they'll have a different formation.
Exactly. Maybe we go that route. But I don't think you take the play out. I think that people who want it removed from the game are just the ones that are complaining, saying, we can't figure this out, so we don't want it in the game anymore.
Well, I know later, I believe next month is when they'll vote on it again. They'll bring it back to the table. So we'll hear more about that. But after this break, let's go over the. Did you have anything else you want to?
No. That's it. That's all I got for NFL.
Let's go over the scores and the schedule of the NBA playoffs when we come back, and then we'll welcome Bolt Brady with and let us know how we can make money over this weekend.
Absolutely, because your boy needs to make some money too.
Yes,
to be honest
me
with
too.
you,
We need groceries. 101.5 ESPN.
ESPN 101.1 FM,
Another
12:30 a.m. ESPN Bakersfield.
I'm surprised it took that long to
homie.
hiccup.
I know. You got JR laughing at you in the back now. We'll be right back, everybody. It's a Friday. Welcome back.
ESPN Bakersfield, 12:30 a.m., 101.1 FM.
Well done, Stevie Nick on Big FM.
Your back tire's looking a little low, Greg.
Sorry, Stevie Nick. I don't know what to tell you.
I
For
deserve
those
it.
of you who don't know, you can hear Sparky on our sister station of Big FM, 101.5. See, I can't even say it. Go ahead and say it for me.
101.5
There
Big
you go.
FM.
There you go. You can hear Sparky every day over there as well. Under his alias,
Yes.
Stevie on Biggie.
I don't say that. It's Steven. But the NBA last night, let's run these down because I was going back and forth. The Knicks, I don't know what happened at the end of that game. Was there an early whistle or something at the free throw line?
This is the only game I did not get to watch because I was still working.
So they were up. Brunson was at the free throw line and missed the second one on purpose because
To
I
get
think
the
there was
ball
like
back,
2
yeah.
seconds left, so they was trying to run out the clock, and the ref whistled, and they screwed up the whole thing. And the the Pistons got the ball with like 0.9 seconds left or something, and the Knicks pulled it out, which I'm excited because that's one of the only games that me and you
We
have different picks on.
we've differed up and down this series. I think this is a really good game across the board, though, because obviously both teams came to play 11-8, or I'm sorry, 118 to 116 was the final. But as I said yesterday, for the Knicks, your success, or at least the success going forward in the playoffs, it's going to be through Karl Anthony Towns. The guy got 30 points yesterday. Like, I don't know what more you need to see to know that you need Jalen and the rest of this team to move towards Cat rather than away from him. It just shows every time he plays this way, they win more often than not. And on the opposite side, if you're the Pistons, you got to get back on top of this defensive game that you guys love to play and keep them under 100 points.
Well, then going into the OKC Memphis game, which you had said Memphis probably going to pull one game out.
Honestly,
So I looked at halftime. I was like, okay, it's over. Memphis is up, 29, 30 points.
Yep.
And then I saw the jaw fall, and I was like, oh, ouch.
And that was the nail in the coffin for me. I think that is where we're going to see this entire team just we're done. Like
Yeah.
it's now they're down 3-0 as the Thunder came back and won 114-108. And like you said, if Jaw going down in what was that, the first half of the game. I know this team is used to playing without Jaw because of how many times he's been suspended or hurt or whatever in the past years. But to have that happen right now is just demoralizing and deflating, and I just don't see this team having the ability to come back.
He came out in the second half on crutches, so I think the season's over for him.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, even if they pulled that game, I don't think they were going to be able to come back in that series. OKC is just too good for Memphis.
They are, and honestly, depending on who they get on the other side of this, which would be, if I'm not mistaken, the Clippers or the Nuggets, which we'll get to in a second as well, because that was an ugly affair. It could be a really, really easy walk into the Western Conference Finals for them, because matchup-wise, the Thunder, there's not a lot of people that match up great with them. So we'll see how it goes, but moving into the final game from yesterday as well, obviously I already put it out there, but Clippers just putting the beat down on the Nuggets after the Nuggets lost Westbrook and Michael Porter.
People are dropping left and right in that game.
I've said it for the last couple of days. You've heard me say it. I think the Nuggets are the team that's in the biggest trouble. I genuinely do. I think that they believe moving on from Michael Malone was the right idea. I disagree wholeheartedly. I think that Michael Malone would have had you in a better position to win this series. I think he would have kicked you into high gear. I think he would have taken the young guys and said, hey, you guys need to be the ones to step up. I know Russ is on the roster, but we need everybody to contribute. And he's right. And this is going to be one of those situations where I think ownership gets in the way, or at least steps on their own toes, and ruins their chances at a somewhat decent run here in the playoffs. Because I genuinely believe you have better coaching in this situation, you'd be able to rebound. You ended up getting shellacked in game 3 after those two go down in an injury. And they're not even two of your major stars. They're contributors, but you still had Jokic on the court. You still had Murray,
who obviously finishes with a triple-double every game.
Every game. And he's doing everything he can, much like Giannis is over from Milwaukee. But what else do you need? You need your guy. You need your second guy to step up. You need your third guy to step up, which they're not getting.
Well, with the Clippers up 2-1, and they game 4 is Saturday. Do you see if Denver loses that one, it's pretty much over? You see them a team that can come back, 2 or 3 games?
I think you can sneak out one more in game 5. Because obviously you'll be going back to Denver, and they're a different team when they're at home. But it depends on the health of Westbrook, Westbrook and Porter, because you need both of them. I know I just said that they're not main stars, but they are contributors to the team. And without them, who else do you have? And it's because you don't have a coach like Michael Malone that would know what to do in this situation. I love Atkinson. He's a great coach, but David, as doesn't have that much time with this team to know exactly what scheme to go to match up against a team like the Clippers.
Well, while we have a couple minutes before we go into the games today and this weekend with Bolt, your boy Mobley named Defensive Player of the Year last night.
Shocker to me, actually. I honestly thought it was going to go to Dyson, as I said the other day. I just very well deserved, in my opinion. The kid's been on the rise the last couple years and is arguably one of the unicorns of that draft from a couple years ago. He will be Cleveland's star here in the next 2 to 3 years, I'd say. I know Darius Garland is there, and so is Donovan Mitchell. How long Donovan stays there, I'm not 100% sure. I'd love to see him stay for the rest of his career, but we'll see. But this is well-deserved. I mean, he's one of the best defensive big men in the league. He's definitely part of the best tandem of big men defensively in the league, because between him and Jared Allen, not a lot gets down there. And again, it's just another piece of his game that he has developed very, very well. I just hope that he develops the offensive game to the same extent next year.
Well, other miscellaneous stories around the NBA, a jersey photo matched to 7 games in Kobe's rookie season for the Lakers, including his preseason debut in '96, his regular season debut in late '96, and his NBA media day, sold for $7 million yesterday. And you would think that's probably the top one sold. As a collector, I had to see what other jerseys sold for more than that. So there was a $24 million Babe Ruth, the called shot jersey.
Ooh.
The Michael Jordan Last Dance jersey was $10.1 million.
Nice. Wait, they have the actual called shot jersey from Babe?
Yep.
Wow. Okay.
$24 million.
Don't get me wrong, that's worth that money. I'm just surprised it still exists.
Yeah, it's probably not dust.
Yeah, no. And like, it's most likely not what it used to look
well,
like.
I've watched a lot of like Pawn Star shows or memorabilia shows where they have like
right, but
the
you
baseball
always see
that's signed
these...
by it, and just reminds me of the Sandlot.
Yeah, and it's like, is it really, or
is
is
Baby Ruth?
Yeah,
but I mean those balls look like they're barely holding on. The threads all falling apart. But the third was which one was it? Maradona's Hand of God, the Argentina jersey.
Ah, yes,
sold for $9.3 million, and that was the '86 FIFA Cup. And then now it's Kobe at $7 million with his rookie jersey. And then sad news out of USC.
Yeah, okay. These things happen entirely too often. But the son of Gilbert Arenas, USC's incoming freshman, oh gosh, what's his first name? Elijah, right? Elijah Arenas, if I'm not mistaken, was in a serious car accident Monday, if I'm not mistaken, and he was put into an induced coma. I pray, and we are praying for the family. I pray that he comes out of this and, is able to at least return to some sort of normalcy. Whether he returns to basketball or not, God only knows. In these types of situations, I have always erred on the side of live your life after these scary situations, because that's what ultimately matters. If that means playing basketball for you, play basketball. But I always say just take it a step at a time. And these super scary situations, you just got to hope and pray that they come out on the other side.
Yeah, big prayers from us. Hopefully everything works out. And we'll get into some positive news, how we can help you make some money with our boy, Bull Brady, right after this break. ESPN Bakersfield, 12:30 a.m.
101.1 FM. Welcome back to the early bird special. It is that time again. Our guy Bolt Brady, longtime handicapper, top 5% in win percentage. You got any questions for him? Text it in right now, 661-842-2000, because Bolt Brady from Bolt Brady and his bro is in the house. What's up, man?
What's happening, fellas?
Oh, not a whole ton, sir. How'd you do last weekend on these NBA games?
Not too shabby, actually. But the lines are super tight. So what I actually do a lot of times is as I end game, I do some end game plays. I like to get a feel for the first quarter. Last night's a perfect example. The Nuggets come out smoking hot, and then they just get smashed.
I mean, we were just talking about that too with the injuries to Russell Westbrook and Michael Porter and stuff like that. Does that affect you at all? If you were gonna pick near the Denver Nuggets, I know you like to follow them a lot. I personally have said they're the biggest team, or I'm not sorry, they are the team in the biggest trouble right now with everything going on.
Well, those two injuries don't concern me too much because I don't think they're that great of players, especially in PJ. But yeah, I agree with you. They're in trouble. You can kiss it goodbye. This thing's over with.
I have to agree. Besides the Memphis Grizzlies series, I really can't see another one that the team looks demoralized, I think, in a way. Like, I don't know, but does that kind of affect the lines at all? Obviously, the over-unders are going to be affected because teams aren't going to be producing as much, right?
Well, you would think so, but no, they don't take that into consideration too much. They still base it all off numbers, and they run their numbers, and they'll come up with their over-under that way. So they don't factor it in. So that's a part of handicapping that you can use to your advantage. If you think there's an emotional side to things, that's always a benefit.
Well, fantastic. What do you got for this weekend, my friend? I know Sparky needs some grocery money, so he needs some winners.
Yes.
All right, let's get some chips here, huh? So the Bucks tonight, the over-under is 230. So far, it's gone 1-1 to the under. But last game, it went over, and it went to 238. But both teams combined for 50% from the field, and they were 30 for 70 from three-point land, 42%. I'm guessing that doesn't happen again. And the Pacers were 19 for 19 from the free throw line. Let's go under 230 in the Bucks game. And then also tonight, T-Wolves, the line's 3.5, but when the spread's short like that, I just like the money line the game, which means you're just picking the team to win. So let's just take the T-Wolves to win the ball game. You'll notice when teams come back home, the role players play way better. And then lastly, guys, Saturday, the Warriors come back home. The line's 2.5. Since 2022, the Warriors are 20-5 in the playoffs at home. It's extremely hard to beat them at Chase Center, and it doesn't matter to me if Jimmy Buckets is playing or not. Steph will ball. Let's money line the Warriors too.
That's an interesting pick because I don't know how the Warriors are going to fare without playoff Jimmy, really, if they have to take on the Rockets they played in game 2.
Well, so here's the thing. Steph's used to playing the last couple of years without someone helping him out, and
True.
I've watched more Warrior games than any team in the NBA, and to beat that team at Chase Center is so hard. It's incredible. So when the line is this small, you have to take them. At least I do.
Any thoughts on my Cavaliers against the Heat in that same Saturday lineup?
You like the Cavs?
I'm a Cavs fan. I'm not going to lie to you.
I love Mitchell. He's one of my favorite players in the NBA, and I think he's one of the best closers in the NBA. I think that they're going to win that series 4-0.
That's what I've been saying. I'm telling you right now.
Well, as a Bulls fan, he's been telling me that they're going to avenge my Chicago Bulls, and I hope they do. But it goes to one of our listeners. He said, I'm thinking Miami pulls game 4 Saturday. I think Miami pulls game 4 Saturday. And will the pay be better if I take it straight up? Do you know the line?
So the pay's definitely better if you take it straight up because the line, I think they're roughly getting like 6 points. So you definitely would get positive return on that. But I wouldn't suggest doing that. If you like them, I would take the points.
Any other text messages, Sparky?
Yeah, the last one was, what is the line for the Nuggets and Clippers tomorrow night? I'm worried with the injuries. And which way is Bolt going?
Which way is Bolt going tomorrow night for the Clippers game?
Yep.
Well, let's take a little gander here, guys. It says the Clippers are minus 6.5. That's a lot of points, but I'll put it this way. I wouldn't take the Nuggets.
Yeah.
With everything going on, I don't exactly blame you, my friend, after the absolute beat down they had last night. Before we let you go, though, I got a golf question for you, or more of a, I'm going to have you predict who you believe is going to be the U.S. team for the Ryder Cup coming up.
Oh, boy. Well,
That's a nice setup.
I'm just saying.
I know that's a good question, but man, I'm gonna have to write these down.
who's going to be on the team?
Yes, or who do you think is going to be the standout in the Ryder Cup this year? Whichever one you want to go with.
Well, Scotty for sure. I mean, it's hard to bet against him. Like every week, you almost want to put money on Scotty. I mean, what he's been doing is tigerish. His even his odds. Like Tiger's odds sometimes were like 4-1 that he'd win the tournament, which is ridiculous when you have like 80 golfers. And even Scotty's getting into that range now. He's like 6-1 to win tournaments. So I would look for him to continue his domination.
Well, fantastic.
Well, I have a question. The one series I'm looking forward to is the Pacers and Bucks. And with what we saw with Lillard in his first game back, I would expect him to kind of shake it off a little bit more and probably have a better game. But what do you think about that series?
Well, Dame needs to, right? He was talking trash from the bench that game.
He was.
And he didn't really back it up.
No.
So I'm thinking when he goes back home with the crowd behind him, I wouldn't be surprised if they rock and roll. So I like the Bucks and the Greek Freak. He's top 5 closer too. So I expect good things from the Bucks when they come home.
Fantastic, my friend. Thank you so much for your time as always, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, fellas, take care.
Thank you. All right, we're going to take a break real quick, pay some bills. On the other side, we'll tell you what we're watching this weekend, along with some miscellaneous news and notes before we get out of here. And you guys can enjoy your weekend, and we'll hand it off to the great Rich Eisen. You're listening to the Early Bird Special right here on 101.1 FM, 1230 AM, ESPN Bakersfield. And don't forget, we're also on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok at the Early Bird Special. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is the early bird special. I am Chris Burdick. Sorry, I didn't want to step on my there.
That's my favorite one
That's Sparky. This is his favorite song.
of Lincoln Park. I'm not a huge fanatic of them, but
Paint and Numb are always on top.
those are my two favorites.
Fantastic songs. I don't know. I have always been a fan of Linkin Park. So any song,
You
by
and
them
millions of others, because when I went and saw them live the last time, I was shocked.
is
on
very
how
talented.
many fans of that.
You know what? They travel well. Yes, it's actually kind of weird. You get people from all over the country at every show. I've met some people from all the way out in Maine at Linkin Park shows. It's crazy.
Yeah, they
But
drive from all over. And a big shout out before we get into any more miscellaneous news. A big shout out
Yes.
to Bolt Brady and his bro. You can check out his podcast on all major podcast platforms, or you can go to boltbradyandhisbro.com for any upcoming games or wagers you might want to look into.
Yep, all of the Believe network as well, BLEAV. You really should utilize this, especially if you are a sports gambler here in California or somebody who likes to do the fantasy football sports side of it on like FanDuel and stuff like that. They could really help you make some money. I'm telling you, top 5 win percentage. That's not something to slouch about, man. That's a lot of good wins for you, which means a lot of money going in your pocket. Sparky might be having much more than just groceries this
I
weekend.
hope so.
I'm
Hope
just
so.
saying. But
So trades, we didn't see the players trades that we were expecting, but we
No.
will probably hear a lot more of them today, I'm hoping.
I am hoping as well. I am liking what I hear out of the Atlanta camp too, that they're making moves to potentially trade Miami for Jalen Ramsey. I like that potential move. I don't know if it's going to happen though. I feel like you're probably right, my friend, and they'll end up making a move with maybe the Chargers or somebody along that line. But I mean, usually days 2 and 3, you'll get more trades. I don't know if we'll get player trades as much as you'll get just the actual draft picks being flipped as we usually see. I do expect to see a little bit of movement here, though. How quickly do you expect to see some sort of trades out of your camp in Miami, though? Because obviously you're waiting on 2 big ones.
Well, one, I don't think Tyreek's going anywhere.
You don't think Hill's leaving?
No, and I think if it was going to happen, we would have heard more about it. But I think a lot of these kind of like the Cousins or, excuse me, the Pickens. I know a lot of players. It made more sense as he's a diehard Jet fan.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
he had said he is a big Brees Hall fan, doesn't want to see him go, but he understands it as now that the rule is you can't have a 5th-year option if it's somebody outside of the first round, and this is his final year on the contract. And with players like Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, that they still need to lock in, that they can see, well, maybe we can get what we can get out of Brees now.
Right. But see, here's my argument to that out of those 3 names that we were talking about, Brees Hall, Sauce Gardner, and Garrett Wilson, 2 of them have kind of said they want to stay. One is already mulling around that he wants to leave, that one being Sauce.
Yeah.
Sauce has been very vocal since the end of last year, saying he's not exactly happy with the direction that the Jets are headed. So if they have one more bad year, it doesn't matter if you want to lock him up for long term. He may not want to be there for long term. So we'll see how that all ends.
I hope that's right.
It would definitely benefit your Dolphins because he is one of the best corners in the league. But I just don't know if you want to move on from a player that would potentially stay if you signed him for the money he wants, which would be dramatically lower than what you're going to sign Sauce Gardner for.
Yeah, and another thing he had mentioned about Sauce was that he loves the guy, but it seems like teams have adapted and know that he is not soft, but he gets hurt a lot when it comes to tackling. And he saw it last year where teams were running towards him to force Sauce to make the tackles. And he said it was not one time that Sauce got a tackle and stayed in the game.
Well, again, I want to highlight this. Cornerbacks are never really good at tackling.
Yeah.
That's not exactly something that's on the job description is being a good tackler.
Well, that's the one thing I did like about Ramsey.
Yeah. Dion was not a very good tackler.
No.
Not at all, actually. And I mean, again, he could cover really well and he can catch a football. That's really all you need a corner to do. And that's what Sauce does very, very well.
Yes.
So, but my issue with it is that Sauce Gardner is going to want way more money than any other corner has even sniffed, probably in the $100 million conversation. And do you, as the Jets, really want to pay him that much money?
No.
That's really going to be the big thing here, because you're going to have to pay quarterbacks. You're going to have to pay wide receivers, including Garrett Wilson. I just think that moving on from Breece Hall, which is a guy you can afford and is a very big impact player for you, is a bad move if you're looking to make this team work long term.
Well, and they're hoping that, bringing in Aaron Glenn, a former secondary type player, that it helps Sauce maybe adapt his game so he stays on the field more. But if I'm with the Jets, and it just almost threw up in my mouth when I said that. But if I was with the Jets, Garrett Wilson would be my number one priority, because I think he's got the higher upside in the future. But going back to Miami, I think Tyreek, this is probably his last year in Miami. I think if they start off slow like they did last season, and we're looking at week 8, under 500, then I think they're going to start talking serious. But I've been shocked before. I know I was hoping Miami would get back into the first round yesterday, but I looked at a lot of the stories from the Miami Herald and other Miami-based sports reporters, and it is the fact that they still have Ramsey on the contract, and they still haven't cleaned up a lot of these veteran contracts. So they don't even have the salary cap to pay 2 first-rounders right now. So that's another reason. They still have 9 other picks left in this draft, and I believe 1 second and 2/3 today. So I'm hoping they address that secondary and they address the offensive line. Ramsey, I think when we looked over the trade offers and what was going to be on the table, it looked like 2nd and 3rd rounders. So I would think if the Ramsey trade's going to happen, it'll happen today. But we've also talked about a lot of these big names, veteran trades usually happen after the trade or after the draft, when teams actually see, okay, well, we didn't fill this hole. The guy didn't land where we wanted to. And I think that's where not only the Aaron Rodgers, but other names like the Kirk Cousins, if Shador ends up getting picked up by Cleveland, maybe teams like New Orleans, or I know we've scratched out Minnesota, but I've also heard on Pat McAfee that he's not scratched out Minnesota on his list, because that's his number one goal. But teams like Pittsburgh, and there's other teams that still need quarterback help. So I mean, I would think if it's Atlanta, they'd probably wait and probably get a better offer from a team that's more needy after the draft. But we've seen other things. What was the Tyler, the guy that's in the draft that wasn't drafted yesterday? Tyler Shaw something.
Tyler Shuck.
Chuck is still out there. Shador is still out there. So I mean, it should be a more interesting draft today. More exciting, I think. There's still a lot of talent in this draft, and I think there was more talent in these mid rounds than the actual first.
That is the consensus across most shows, that the later rounds are where you're going to get more of the solid starters. I think Shador goes early in this draft, or I'm sorry, in these rounds in the draft. I think Cleveland picking him in the first 6 kind of makes sense, if not the Raiders at 5. But going forward, I mean, you guys trading away Ramsey wouldn't necessarily shock me today. I just feel like you don't get a lot of those trades within the draft. I think you get those outside of the draft, and you get picks for later, a couple years from now, maybe, because I do think you could still get maybe a 2nd or a 3rd round for someone like Jalen Ramsey. It's a stretch, don't get me wrong. It depends who you're talking to. But from a team like Atlanta, who is in the running for him, I don't see you guys obviously getting that right now, because they just traded away most of them yesterday.
Yeah, and I'm hoping if they do it today that we would get a player back, not a draft pick.
Right.
Because looking at Greer's picks over the last few years, not a lot of them have stuck.
Right.
And I'd take a Terrell or a Nakobe Dean or whoever is available. I know there's a lot of corners that are on the market right now too.
Right. But do you really want to actually just fill a spot, or do you want somebody that's going to be an impact player? You know what I mean?
Well, right now it's a young team. We're looking at Cam Smith and some other corners that are on the team. We need a presence of somebody that's played in bigger games.
Right. And real quick, before we get out of here, who in your opinion was the big botch of night 1 of the draft? Which team do you think didn't do the job?
I think it's Cleveland.
You think Cleveland
Personally,
didn't do their
I
job?
think it's Cleveland. I think if you had a chance to get somebody like Hunter, I don't understand why you would pass on that.
I have to agree with you unless they have more people in the second and third round they're really liking right now. And obviously, I think that Shador might be one of those guys because they will be moving on from Deshaun Watson here, I believe, in the next year or two. Personally, I think it was Pittsburgh. Their pick, although they came out and said they addressed a much needed move on the defensive line that is a growing need, I guess, for them. I've never really seen it. Your defensive line has always been the strength of your defense, unless they really don't anticipate TJ coming back. Maybe the deuces is a real thing, and maybe they actually are going to be losing TJ Watt if they can't figure out a contract situation, which would make sense of this urgent move that they were desperately needing on the defensive line. Taking the Oregon D tackle, though, shocked a lot of people, especially since you need a quarterback, and Shador was sitting right there. 7% chance that he was going to get there. And also a crazy stat I saw from yesterday, the Saints haven't drafted a quarterback in the first round since 1971.
Really?
71 was the last quarterback they drafted. And you passed on Shador yesterday too.
I wonder if they get him today. I wonder if Cleveland has something else up their sleeve.
I don't know. And, it wouldn't surprise me if we see Shador go to the Saints, although as a Falcons fan, I desperately do not want to see that. But you haven't listened to the Early Bird Special. Thank you for joining us this week. Join us back here Monday, 7 to 9, as usual, on 101.1 FM, 12:30 a.m., ESPN Bakersfield. Sparky, let's get out of here.